All right, so what I want to do is even though it's going to seem redundant, let's listen to this from again. Let's take that 4 minutes. Let's listen to it again. And what I want to do is make sure that we listen for the things that we talked about, right? So to actually practice this active listening, of hearing the consistency of tone, on the B flat, in the upper register, hearing the articulation, what are the choices, the dynamics as a color, all the things that we talked about and thought about in the first theme, and we'll go from there. So let me get this all back to sharing. I got this. Press this button. I'm going to share this time. I think this is going to work better, and I'm going to do one more thing because I would like the sound to be share computer sound mono. Okay, I think the sound will be more effectively shared. I've lost everybody's faces again. Let me see if I can find them. I want to see everybody. Hello, hello. Where is... I've got 16 screens and nobody's faces on any of them. There. You're behind the screen I'm sharing. All right, I got it. All right, here we go. Let's listen to it one more time. And I think the sound's going to be better this time. Boom. We can hear it? It's okay? Again, like really, really stunning playing. I want to point out something that I noticed, and here's one of the things that I want. Like, it's really cool to notice, right? We had our diminuendo here. This is the first time through the first theme. It's marked piano here. But when we go all the way down, I never noticed this until today, that when we have it again, we got that same accent, but we've got a diminuendo to piano right there. Like, it's a nuance different, I suppose, other than they took the time to write it down. Very interesting. Like, and like, is there something in the harmony? Like, we'd have to, for me to really feel like I've got an answer that makes sense to me, I would have to like sort of like dig into what's going on the piano part, you know, and try and figure that out. But all of a sudden, I really noticed it because we talked about that part in the previous session, and it's super interesting to all of a sudden notice some nuances. I also noticed for the first time that instead of tenutos in this spot, they've got accents, right? Which is interesting. Like in the first iteration, they're tenutos, and it's in a different key. So these are things that like we want to, you know, it's like when you're a kid and someone asks you to compare and contrast things, right? What's the same, what's different, and how are we highlighting those things in the presentation of the music? All right, just wanted to throw all that out there because this stuff gets very exciting for me. I love it. I love to look at things like that. All right, so let's look at this second theme. So we're going to be going in this session, you know, if we can, all the way to there. Now, did everybody notice? I hope you did. And I'm glad Sabina Meyer did all the things I suggested. And that's probably good because I got a lot of these ideas from her. This diminuendo started out loud. The poco ritardando was very poco until it got to the end. A ritardando, a diminuendo, a crescendo, any sort of gradual change starts off without a lot of change and then exponentially gets more change the closer you get to the end of it. That's the way these are effectively done. And she absolutely did that in every instance. The crescendos, the diminuendos, you know, all that stuff. I wanted to also highlight when she has this instruction that says sempre pianissimo, which means always pianissimo. She still had a phrase inside of it. A lot of times we see an instruction like that, and then we just play everything as quietly as we can. But that's not the instruction. The instruction is always pianissimo. It doesn't say always exactly the same volume literally. It just means all within the spectrum of pianissimo. And the amount of control she has over the clarinet, you know, in these different registers, really spectacular. You know, and to be able to like really hear that and think about it when you're listening to it, like if you're just listening to it like when you brush your teeth, which you should do, like then you don't have the music in front of you, so you don't know that those are the instructions that she's following. But when you hear her, to get back to this idea of realization of the instructions, when you're looking at the instructions, the whole thing just jumps off the page. Oh man, that's really good. Oh wow, right? Because they're not just things that she's making up, right? She's following the instructions, and she's following the instructions with artistry and intention and really, really good clarinet playing. So along those lines, let's take a look. Does anyone want to play the second theme? I mean, I can kind of do it, but I'd rather hear somebody else do it if somebody else wants to. One of the things that even more than the first theme, we've really got to think about a lot of these. And what I'm circling essentially is this tie that goes over the beat. In all, I'm going to make a pretty broad but true statement, even though it's probably overstated, but take it for what it's worth. Everybody all the time comes off these ties too early. Our tendency is always to come off of them too early, which is one of the reasons why it's really, it's great to look at the piano part. Where are we, piano part? Where are we? There it is. So we can really hear da-ba-da-dum, because it's when we hear this note that then we leave after the tie. We've got to really hear those subdivisions and hear that beat so that we come off on the second eighth note. One of the things that we can do is just simply subdivide it. I put my reed on, I got it wet again. Is to simply subdivide it. Right, so that we're tonguing those eighth notes. Does that make sense? We're tonguing the eighth notes that are inside that. But it's even better if we hear the harmony as well. And that comes from listening to the music actively, as well as when you're in the car, and being able to just sort of have it as something that you just kind of know how it goes. That is something that it's a bit of a tangent, but one day I was teaching, this is like 30 years ago, and I'm standing in this music school, and I'm playing the clarinet, just fooling around. And this little kid, he must have been like 5 years old, he comes up to me and he looks at me very seriously, looks right in my eyes, and he goes, "I see how you're doing that." And I said, "Seriously? Wow, what am I doing?" And he said, "You're putting down the fingers that sound like the song." And I thought, there it is. That's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to put down the fingers that sound like the song, and we know what the song sounds like. And if we know what the song sounds like, it's going to come out the way we want it to come out eventually, right? There's a lot of clarinet practice to do along the way. But it's just have that feeling like this is a song we know when we're just playing it. And when Sabina Meyer plays it, it sounds like that. But then when you look at the instructions, she's following the instructions pretty seriously. Okay, so let's take a look. Who's playing? Me? Not me. I hope not me. Anybody? Last chance. Going once, going twice. Please say yes. Okay, I'll do it. So we have the same idea. We've got threes, right? 1, 2, 3. Well, I guess, yeah, this one's different because of the shape of it, right? But we've got 3 downward going. I guess there's 4, but we're going to pretend it's 3. I don't know why that's important to me, but it is, right? And it starts out piano. And we are going to this note, right? Keep that in mind. Actually, I'm going to use the real part. Okay, so where we do? Okay, so we're starting here. Yeah, we're not really going to that note, but that is this is where we get connected back to the first theme. That's important, right? So then this gets a little bit fishy as to where this actually ends. Yeah, this phrase doesn't really have a particular ending to it. This is a more complicated second theme because this goes into development. I don't think it's even arguable. It does. Because like all of a sudden we've got, at number 1, we've got a change in time signature, a change in character a little bit with the trills. All of a sudden we are in D flat major, clarinet sounding D flat major for a second, which I don't know if anybody knows theory. That's interesting because it's the flat 6 of F. If we think of ourselves in F, G, A, B, C, D, flat is harmonically a very tension-filled place to be. That's why we're in this key. And then we noticed a big D flat major scale right there. And then we're immediately not in D flat anymore. That's the way it goes in development sections. Development sections will change key almost all the time. Anyway, let's get to playing. Play along with me, if you will. If you're not going to play for us, play with me. Okay, so I'll count us off. 1, 2, 3. Stop there. Here's what I want you to get out of that. I practiced a little bit this morning. Not a lot, but a little bit. I identified what scale everything is and what chord it is. So if you practice your scales, you know your scales. This is E flat major. I got it. That makes it easier because I don't read any of the notes. This one is a dominant 7 chord in D, but there's no D, in G. So it's a D dominant 7 going to G in theory, but there's no D in it. So I look at that ahead of time, I know what it is, and I read 0 notes. I read the first one, I read the last one, and I know what it is. That is a super, super helpful thing. That's where theory can really help you play the clarinet. Just want to toss that in case anybody ever wonders why you practice scales, why you would need to know any theory. It's that reason I use it all the time. they don't tell us something when we first learn how to read music. And they teach us how to count music and read the notes. It's great. As we get better, and this is where learning as an adult can really, really help you, because kids can't really do this, right? You learn your scales. You can recognize the patterns and the groups and leverage that to better performances and learning music easier. But the idea isn't that you do the same thing you first did. Every good boy does fine, face in the space, and then you have, okay, once you got all that, yeah, that's not how we do it anymore, right? How we do it is we look for the pattern. You see the pattern, and then you play the pattern. You don't read every single note like a good student. You ignore as many of them as you can, quite honestly, and still play the right notes. And then you go from there. I don't read every single note in any music that I ever play. That's the difference for me between being able to play a piece and decoding it to actually knowing the piece. And it's something that, unless somebody tells you, and hopefully me telling you, if you had any inhibitions about not reading all the notes and just still playing them right anyway, I don't read them. At some point I do, otherwise I wouldn't know what they are. But after I read them, I stop reading them, and then because you can't read every single note at the rate these notes go. Like, you literally cannot read that at the speed it happens. You have to know what it is ahead of time, and if your fingers know the pattern. Go ahead, yeah.
So what's a good way to get to that point? I know scales, obviously, but what else?
Well, I mean, so the best thing to do, and let me just pitch this early, it's probably a year out, but I've got the most incredible book of scales anybody could ever have, and I'm going to publish it at some point. I've got so many things to do, I don't know when, but no matter what scale book you're using, the first thing you should do is do bits of the scale, if not the whole thing, from memory. Right? You should just get them from memory, because what we want to do is be able to see something and have our fingers know the entire pattern. Right? I don't want to just be selling my own products. I just made a video that actually goes to this a little bit. It's called Air Punctuation. In the thumbnail, there's a picture of Dr. Evil quoting air punctuation. And here's the idea in a nutshell, right? We all learn how to play the clarinet, and we blow for every single note. It's a very instinctual thing to do. And we don't really practice connecting the notes. So it does two things. The notes don't get connected right in the first place. Kids will get themselves out of that eventually. Adults, if they intentionally get themselves out of that, because there's a ghost of it that lingers. But when it comes to your fingers, and why it's important, is your fingers will learn 5 signals. If you're blowing for every note, it learns 5 signals. C, D, E, F, G. It's 5 things to do. But if you connect them with your air, it's 1 signal. So your brain just automatically offloaded 4/5 of what it was doing. And our fingers, I can't prove this, but I know it's true, that our brain, if it can, like if I look at this E flat, it'll just send 1 signal. It's just, my brain is not sending the signal for every single note. But you have to practice it that way. So if you memorize your scales, even it's not even necessarily that you have to be ready for a test. I mean, they don't have to be memorized in that way. But if we practice our scales and we turn away in our chair, I mean, I use a chair I can turn very easily, but you turn away and play the scale, and then turn back and look. If you got a note wrong, no problem. Look at it, what it is, play it, turn away. So you're not always looking at the scale. That way, it's getting into you in a way that is much, much deeper, not necessarily in preparation of playing it on purpose in front of somebody, but it will get to that, right? And then the other thing to think about is when we're practicing scales, keep in mind that we all are told something that's very true, and it's one of the only things that we overdo, a lot of us, is play it slowly. Yes, you should do that. But at a certain point, we have to remember that too slowly doesn't have any relationship to when we play it fast. Right? If I practice my scale, great, but that doesn't help me with, because it's not really the same thing. Right? So what I encourage people to do is practice slowly to get the right note. You need the right fingerings for sure. I'm not encouraging anyone to play wrong notes or have inconsistencies in your scale. But once you get it, like then the slowest you need to practice it is, if you don't miss it, here's a rule. This is going to sound almost ridiculous. If you're not making any mistakes, you're not practicing, right? So if it needs to be in an area, like if you're trying to get your scale to 104 as an arbitrary number in 16th notes, you should start around 88. And if you can't play it at 88, your target of 104 is not right. Right? Then you have to have a different target, because 88 is in the ballpark, right? I mean, I can do it real quick. Like if I'm trying to play, that's my goal, and I can't do this, then 104 can't be my goal, because I'm not close enough to that. I could be really quickly. Like, these things can change very quickly. But I would put my metronome, I'd say, okay, my goal is 88. And then I would go to 66 or whatever. And I won't go off on this tangent. I use an analog metronome, so I can click many numbers at a time. And I'm always on, if you look at these numbers, they're beautiful. They all double. Every number on here doubles to another number. This is mathematically genius numbers that they're at. And it's much nicer just to click, 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 click. Every click is 5%. And scientifically speaking, 5% is the smallest amount we can tell the difference in our bodies. So if you're using a digital metronome and you go from 120 to 121, you've done nothing, right? Like, so 116 to 120, about 5%. 226, about 5%. That's the right amount to shift up. Anyway, the whole point, I've gotten a little bit off topic, but not really, is like, this is getting them, quick enough. It's it's a long game, right? I mean, so just keep in mind that you can practice them very slowly. I would encourage this, and we were doing this in class this morning, to do super slow scale and arpeggio practice as a warm-up. That way, you're getting the motor skills in. Like, if you want to, whatever scale, let's do D flat since we're playing a D flat scale. Start on D flat. And just play the whole scale as a warm-up, as a long tone, right? We play long tones. You can do other things. You can play a long tone scale, right? Just a bunch of whole notes. You're doing a long tone. You're warming up. You're practicing your breathing. You're practicing your tongue position. Anything you want to be practicing. And you're starting to put that scale into your body. And then after you've done that, I'm a big proponent of going warm up about 10, 15 minutes. And then skill development practice, which would include scales. You can take that same scale and then put a metronome on and play it slightly faster than that, right? And then you're practicing the scale in a form that will lead to getting the result that you want. Obviously, playing it in whole notes, that's not directly headed to where you want to be. Like, you could do that for days at a time, and it'll have a little impact, but not a lot. But it'll be a great warm up, right? So combine. God, I sound like I used to make fun of middle school teachers that talk like this. If you combine desired outcomes into one exercise in a way that you can then scaffold. God, I sound like a nerd. You can then scaffold them up in individual sessions later in your practice. It really, really boosts how much you're able to get out of a practice session, because it's not all pressuring you all at once. Am I even answering your question at this point? I don't know. I hope it helps.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that just becoming familiar with it and doing it, not isolated as a slow thing, and I think just internalizing that is the thing.
This is coming to me. This is a very sort of very angled and very weird. One of the things that you can do, and it will help in a very nonlinear way, is like when we first pick up our clarinet, we all play a variation of the same thing, right? Everything's in the key of C. Right? Everything we play is in the key of C. Why not play? Right, well, I'm going to play a B flat. No one does, but you can. But that's a weird idea. But what's not a weird idea is playing songs you know. And by songs you know, I'm talking Mary Had a Little Lamb, Happy Birthday, whatever song you know, play it by ear in the key of D flat. It'll frustrate you and irritate you, but you will start to get a context for D flat. Because that's what's missing in our scales, is a context, a musical context.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is why when we approach it through music, it comes alive in a different way. This is tangential at best, but Ricardo Morales told me, and he does this, I've witnessed him do it a lot, he plays every note on his clarinet as if he's performing at Carnegie Hall. So when he plays his scales, it's this artistic statement, right? Which takes a lot of focus. But it's, if you can play your scales in a way, you know, like we all tend to, like, I'm gonna, this will be a little bit mocking of myself and the whole world, but it's how we learned it in band. That's not musical at all, right? That's very sort of functional, right? So if we play it, right, then it has a shape, and then that turns into music in a way that's much different, and it's much more fun. What it requires is some internal energy to make it happen, and I've got to be honest, I don't always have it, right? Like it's frustrating, but I think all of these things will really help. The main idea is to get it into one signal that gets fired from your brain. I learned this from when I used to study saxophone from a guy up in Boston who's great teacher, great, and it's really all about having your brain send groups of signals, groups of actions in one signal. And so, you know, don't be afraid to move the metronome up. I'll leave my final statement on this question that I've taken too long to answer is, if you are playing something and you can play it 8 out of 10 times correctly, you got it. We want to be missing to practice something. You got to miss it 4 times out of 10. If you can play it 60% of the time right, that's where you should be practicing. So if you have a passage and you're trying to get it up to a speed where it goes 60% of the time correct, that's where you practice. Don't practice it way slower than that, because that's not where you need the practice. You need it to be achievable, but not easy, right? That's our sweet spot for practicing. And it's a little bit counterintuitive to do, because we've all been told, like, practice it slowly until you could never make a mistake. Yeah, except for that doesn't actually help us get it to where we want it to be, not making a mistake, right? I mean, we actually need to make the mistake. That's one of the things we were talking about again in class this morning. Make a mistake. If you make a mistake, that tells you what to practice. That tells you what you need to change. If you don't make a mistake, you don't know what's going to break down in a performance. So I would have those ideas lead my choices in terms of all of that. So
Thank you.
yeah, well, you're quite welcome. I mean, listen, I love to talk about this stuff. Just give me a chance. Put me in. When we're looking at this piece, right? Like, I would say that there's. Let me give you some strategies specific to this piece, right? If I'm looking at this, like, and I want to get this, the first thing I got to know is that it's E flat major, right? Then I would go into a thing where I practice E flat major. Whatever E flat major pattern you want to do. That's an arpeggio, right? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, whatever anybody's written as a scale pattern, good enough, do that. Then the real trick to this particular one is coming in the right place, which has nothing to do with knowing E flat major, right? That's an entirely separate skill, right? So that's where, when we start to think about that, like, we got to start counting on this E flat in order to come in here, right? So I'm going to go back one measure. Right? So we need to hear the note that's here. And there's no better way to hear it than to put a note there. Fill that space up. So you know that second note's in the right place. That's going to help a lot. So I'm going to do it one more time. Right, so that you could actually actively hear that space. Because if you can't, let's be honest, that's not a long time, right? Calling that a rest is almost unfair because there's no resting that can happen during that rest, right? That's just displacing this, right? And the same thing here, right? I would do the same thing. I would just put another C in there until when I leave the C out, I can still hear the ghost of that C or the ghost of that B flat. And because I guarantee there's two challenges. Being able to play the passage, but I think that's a challenge that everybody here probably has. You got that one. It's a matter of coming in right in time. And so, looking at that is a thing. And so also like this, since there was a question about this, and I think I got about 5 minutes left, let's talk about this, right? There's many different strategies to employ, right? One of which obviously is play it slow. Before I get too far into that, I would recognize every A is flat, every D is flat. Because one of the things you can do for yourself is eliminate choices. When you look at music, not any note is possible, right? We're in a key. We're in a thing. We're doing a particular thing. Not every note is possible. Eliminate other options, right? So what I see here is G, E natural, B flat, G. And if you're into music theory, that's a C dominant chord without the C. Again, quite a bit like this dominant chord that we had up here without the root, but that's not that important, but that certainly helps me. And so I look at that and I go, I'll practice it like this. I shouldn't have uncircled those. I'm just going to play those notes. Those are the pillars. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to this actually is more difficult, and I've got to be neater about writing it. I'm going to change these into just playing every other note. Because I'm thinking of 1 and 2 and 1 and 1 and 2 and dabba 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 dabba. So I want to play those notes, right? So I'm going to play just those notes. I'm going to stop circling just because I think you got the point. And that last circle's stupid. I don't know what that's doing there. Get out of there. Boom. Okay. So we're filling the notes in. So we got to hear those notes, right? So now, how about adding, I'm going to stop circling them because it gets a little hard. I missed one. So I'm just putting in one of them that I left out. And then I'm going to add another one. So it's all sort of emerging, right? It's like it's in the fog, and then it starts to come out. And again, it's the first note. Then every other note. And now I'm just going to add the second note in every time. Now I'm going to add the next note in. And then I'm going to add. But again, this would all be done gradually working it up. Again, with the rule, 6 times out of 10, that's the spot you want to practice. But here's the thing. Your most effective practice will be done in a way that feels very nonlinear. And let me plug this because she's the one that really put this into words for me. I've got a podcast. If you haven't heard it, it's called the Clarinet Ninja Podcast. The episode that I am referring to when I'm talking about this kind of practice is one with a neuroscientist and violist named Dr. Molly Gebrian, who is a genius when it comes to how to practice. So all the podcast episodes are fantastic. All the YouTube videos are fantastic. But this one with Dr. Molly Gebrian is perhaps the best. The only problem with it is I was new at podcasting and used a platform that wasn't that great. The audio's good. The video's not really synced. But her information is great. It's great. She is the best. And it's this kind of practicing where we're creating puzzles for ourselves. You want your brain to solve all sorts of different puzzles. And then all of a sudden, things come alive in a way that is very durable. I mean, I think that that's the thing that is most, I'm just going to check to make, we're going to get thrown out here in a second. That's the thing that is most, breakout rooms, let me see. Oh, we got 6 minutes left. I'm rushing for nothing, right? So let me give you some more ways to practice it. The durability of practicing everything in order means that if something goes wrong in that ordering of things, everything falls apart, right? If you always play these notes in the exact same order they come, if you miss one of them, everything that you're about to play is built on success and everything you played previously. That's the recipe for, we've all experienced this, right? When you make one mistake and then you make 100 other mistakes after that mistake during the performance. I've done it. Maybe you guys haven't, but I've done it. And so if you practice it lots of different ways, it really helps build the durability. I would also practice I would leave a lot of notes out. I would practice the first 3 notes. Any version of that. You can hear my brain struggling with the puzzle. Any version of that, right? Or you could play, excuse me. So I'm playing the first note and the last 2. And you could hear, I also want you to know that, I don't like to make mistakes in front of people, and I just did, but that helps my brain. I'm learning stuff. Like my brain is solving that puzzle in a way that it'll make it stronger when I try and play the notes for real. And, you can just play all sorts of games almost with yourself about that. And it's super, super helpful to, again, then when you put it in the right place. The other person that talks a lot about this stuff, I have not done a podcast episode with him. His name is Noah Kejiyama, and he has a website called The Bulletproof Musician. He comes at it more as a psychiatrist than a neuroscientist. So, but they come to a lot of the same conclusions, and they're both really, really powerful. Lots of information there. If you go on my website, I've got some blog posts that might be interesting that are related to this. So all of this, you can do this in scale practice as well. This type of practice works well with all of it. The more basic types of practice would be like the one everybody does, and everybody does it because it's good, not because it's not. Would be to so you're doing short long short long short long short or short long. Then you have to flip it the other direction. Because what that is doing is it's making every interval 10 times faster than it actually is in real life. And you're practicing getting your fingers to the right place cleanly. So then when you play it normally, it seems quite slow. Kind of. And I'm saying that kind of facetiously, but it reminds me, I don't know if anybody else, I don't really like the movies, but I watched The Matrix, right? And there's a great scene where he dodges bullets, right? Because the bullets to him are coming very slowly, right? So he can just move out of the way because the bullet's moving in slow motion. And that's what you want to feel like when you're playing the clarinet. Now, well, yes, you are dodging bullets. We all are all the time when we're playing the clarinets, metaphorically. But everything appears to be unfolding very slowly because you got such clarity. And these practice techniques will help you to develop that clarity. And when we hear Sabina Meyer play it, or Ricardo, or Julian Bliss, or Anthony McGill, or Michelle Zukovsky, like we're hearing that happen in their head. Everything operates almost as if they're doing it in slow motion and everybody else isn't. But this is how they got there. Or they may have just had an innate ability. I happen to know Ricardo very well. I know Anthony a little bit. I don't know Sabina Meyer at all. But I do know that like a lot of what they do does come from I know it comes from intentional practice. It may not be quite as thoughtful as this because I've done a lot of thinking about this specifically for adult clarinet players who understand how a system works and how that system can help speed up the rate of your success. Because we all know as adult clarinet players that are coming back to it or trying to hone it or just starting for the first time, the learning process needs to go faster, right? Like we don't have time to screw around with stuff. And these systems will absolutely help with that. And listen, I know I'm sure I'm not supposed to sell my program. I do want to say this though. My website is clarinetninja.com. You can email me through that. My email is theclarinetninja@gmail.com. So please do reach out about anything about the clarinet ever, and I will get back to you. We've got 5 seconds. This has been fantastic. Thank you for doing this with us and with me. I really love it.